Hi, my name is Dina, a guide at GetSetUp, and today we're going to talk about intro to watercolor, and we're going to do some really fun and basic techniques. Now remember to jump in our chat, give us your thoughts, and provide us some feedback. Now let's talk about some of the basic supplies that you need for today. Let's get a paintbrush. Does it matter what size? No. Grab a paintbrush. I'm going to use a round size 8. This is my favorite brush. I use it all the time. You're going to also need watercolor paper. I recommend watercolor paper as being the #1 supply that you need to own. So this is just a basic watercolor paper. You're going to want to have at least 2 sheets for today. 2 cups of water. Some salt. You can do sea salt, Himalayan salt. It does not matter. This is just plain table salt. And then of course your watercolors and some paper towels. So let's get started. I'm going to paint horizontal. That means left to right is long. Not this, but this. All right. So let me get my glasses on here. All right. So the first technique that we are going to do is wet on dry. So I like to get my paint to be a nice like butter consistency. Like let's take this and think about making melted butter. All right, I'm going to put a little bit more water in there. And I just want you to paint something. I'm going to paint like a leaf or a petal. And that's just to practice, but you could do a circle. You can do a rectangle, a diamond, whatever you want to do. It does not matter. This is wet on dry. Now let's do it again. Rinse our brush. And we're going to do wet on wet. So I want you to start, we're going to do this one a little different. I want you to start by laying down water. And I don't want you to do it in the shape. I just want you to lay it down maybe in a square shape, or you could do a round shape. Now I have a little bit of color left on my brush. Hopefully you can see that. I wanted to pick it up so that you can at least see where I'm putting the water, right? Yours should be clear. Now let's grab some of that paint again in that butter consistency. And I want you to paint the same shape on top of this wet. Now look at the difference. What is happening? This is blooming, and it's going to continue to bloom until the paper dries. So you can look at these 2 different techniques and see how they work. It's very fun. So I want you to continue watching this as your paper dries. Let's move on to the next one. This one is called charging. I love this one. This one is so much fun. And we're just going to start. You can start by painting a leaf or whatever you're painting with just water. So I'm just painting a simple leaf shape. And then I'm going to grab my paint and I'm going to touch it. Just going to touch it into here, right? Look at that. This is called charging, where we just tap it in there, right? You can try doing it by adding some more color in there if you want. Maybe you want to put a little pink in there. And you can see how these interact with one another. So we have wet on dry, wet on wet, and this is called charging. Some people call it poke because you're poking it kind of with your brush. Now the next technique, I'm going to give this a rinse. This one is called glazing. Glazing is very different because we got to start with a really light version of our color. So we're going to reduce the value by laying down some water, grabbing a little bit of color, not a lot. So we're doing just a little bit of color in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to lay this down. I'm going to do the same kind of shape, but I'm going to kind of think of it like a flower. So I'm going to just do 4 petals that kind of, face each other. If you want to get fancy and do a different kind of flower, that's fine. But what we're really focused in on are just laying down these 4 petals that don't have much color to them. Now, in order for this to work, we need to let that dry. We have to let that dry completely. So we're going to continue, but we're going to let this one dry, and then we'll talk about it when we get back. All right, let's move to the next one. This one is called wet on wet push. Wet on wet push, all right? So I want us to lay down a shape. Again, I'm just gonna do a simple leaf shape. Just like that. And I'm gonna grab some color and I'm gonna put it down here at the end. Just a little bit down here, right? And then I'm gonna use this brush to push color up into my leaf shape. Okay? You can also do another color. Oh, I washed in my clean water. I do that every time. It happens. No big deal. All right, I'm gonna grab another color here. And I'm just going to maybe lay it down here. You could lay it down at the top so that we can push color into each other. Now, push. Just push it in there. You can turn your paper around if you need to. In fact, I'm going to turn it around. I think you guys will be able to see it better. And I'm just going to push that color in. Now, again, as you're doing these techniques, think about how can I use this in my painting? You're just going to open your artist brain to that. Yes, you all have an artist's brain. So I'm pushing color one into the other. See how I'm pushing it? You can push it the other way. You can push it as many times as you want. I think art is all about manipulating the materials that you have. So play, play, play. It's really good for you. And if you get in the wrong water cup, it's okay. Art should never stress you out. It should be fun, stress-free, and calming. All right, so the next one that we're going to do is called drag. I love this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just lay down some water again, just like this. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to grab my blue, just like that. And I'm going to lay it down here at the bottom. If I can see it, sometimes I have to turn my head a little bit. You can see it's already starting to bloom a little bit. I'm going to turn this around so you can see it just a little bit better, my friends. Okay, a little bit of water on my brush, and I'm going to drag that color. See how I'm dragging it? I'm just dragging it. What this does is it really helps us play with values. So maybe we have a darker color down here and a lighter color at the top. We're just dragging that color. This is great for flowers. Look at that. You can see how that could be a petal. I use this a lot when I paint cosmos. All right. So let's move to the next one. This one is where we're going to remove some paint. We're going to do this with a paper towel and we're going to do it with a brush. So we're going to paint a leaf first or whatever you want to paint. You could do it with a flower, you can do a leaf, you can do a stem, you can do a circle, it does not matter. So I'm going to lay down a simple leaf. Just like this. We're going to do this 2 times. So this one, I'm going to let it sit for a second. Now let's come over here to this one. Let's not do a leaf on this one. Let's paint a box, a nice big box. All right. I'm going to teach you a little trick about painting clouds. This one is all about removing paint, my friends. We're going to remove paint. All right, so I'm going to leave that to sit. I'm going to rinse out my brush just like that. I want you to take your paper towel and I want you to rip off the end, just the very end, just like this. Okay, we want to use this jagged edge. Okay, and we're going to just kind of ball it up like this. We're going to come to here and we're going to lay it down and we're going to remove paint. Now this is a fabulous way to make texture. I love to do this with my skies and I can make clouds. All right, you can flip it around, get a new piece. A simple, simple way to make clouds, just like that. Now we're removing paint. So you're understanding maybe that not everything about art has to be about putting color down. Sometimes it's about pulling color up. Another thing that you can do is we can remove paint using a brush. So I'm going to get a paint brush. I washed it. It's kind of dry, not super dry, but pretty dry. And we're going to go to here and we're going to just grab it with our brush and pull it up. Okay, and then I'm going to dry that off, give it a rinse. And I can keep doing this. This is great. Now, if I were going to do this for an actual leaf, I probably wouldn't do it that thick. Okay. You can come back and add color in there. Maybe you want to do a different color. Maybe it's not a leaf that you want to do. It's a flower. But this is a great way to remove paint. This is also a great way to remove mistakes. If you have something on your page that you don't want anymore, this is one way to do it. I will tell you that it's not going to ever get you back to a pure white piece of paper. And that's because watercolor is really a stain and it stains your paper. So, but it does help you get rid of mistakes. Okay, so moving on, I'm gonna trade this paper out and get a new sheet. I don't encourage you to do that. Keep painting on here. I just wanna make it a little bit cleaner for myself. The other thing I'm gonna do is get some more paper towels. Paper towels are so good when you are doing watercolor. They not are just there to clean up. They're great to pull paint off of your paper like we just demonstrated, but they're also really good for pulling paint out of your brush if you get too much water, if you get too much paint. So I'm just gonna kind of clean that up. All right. Now, if I were painting something, really nice, I'd probably even switch out my water that I got dirty, but for today, that's okay. All right, so the next technique that we're going to do is called a flat wash. Now, I encourage you on this one to use a flat brush. You can still use your round brush if you don't have a flat brush, but a flat brush for a flat wash is ideal. This is not even that great of a flat brush. I just have a couple laying around. We're gonna do something called a flat wash. That means we don't want any other texture. We want it as flat as we possibly can get it. So just like everything else, I grab some water. Now I'm gonna come over here to my paint. Okay, now it kind of depends on how thick or how vibrant the hue is that you want here. It may be really thin, but you still need it to be kind of watery. I'm just going to paint a square and I need a little bit more water. So I'm going to paint this square. Now remember, we want it to not have texture. We want it to be as flat as we possibly can get it. So how do you do that? Well, because paper has teeth and we want to make sure we're filling the grooves. So we want to go horizontal and we want to go vertical. And we're going to pull this across just like this, right? Now, if you feel like somewhere it has too much color, you can dry your brush off a little bit and pull it like that. You can tell this is not a very good brush because I just lost a bristle. All right, see how I pulled that color up? Let's say that happens when you're doing a flat wash. It's easy to fix. As long as this is wet, you can come back in here. Just make sure you go both ways, guys, to fill that in so that this becomes as flat as it possibly can be. You can always grab a little bit more water or a little bit more paint if you need. Now, the one thing that you've got to be really careful of is not to overwork anything. So that means at some point you've got to make a decision. You've got to make a decision and say, that's what I want. Because if you don't, you're going to keep pulling on your paper. Your paper is made of fiber and it can only handle so much friction. So the more you pull, the more you're going to pill it. It's called pilling. Kind of like if you've ever had fleece or a sweater and you get those little bumps on there, your paper will do the same thing. So be very careful of that. All right. Now the next thing we're going to do is a wash. I love these washes, but this wash we're going to do where we're going to go from very dark to very light. So we're going to start with a nice buttery mix here. I say that a lot, I know. So it's melted butter, and we're going to wash. We're going to go from dark to light. So we're just going to kind of paint in like this, right? Just like this, and then we're going to do some dips. Go dip, scrape it off a little bit. Oops, I got a little bit of spatter going. Let's go dip, brush it off, and come back in. And we're just going to keep pulling that down, right? Now here you can see I kind of washed my brush out. Let's wash it out to clear and lay that water down. And you can see it's just going to all bleed. Boy, I'm dripping a lot today. It happens. We're just practicing, right? You can even come back in and pull this down a little bit more. So you're thinking about, where can I do this? Well, this is great for skies or even flowers. You could do it with flowers. You could do it with plants, whatever your brain is thinking of. But what we want is this wash of very dark to very light. Okay, monochromatic wash is what that is called, because it is one color. So how do you do it with more than one color? And this is where we do this with skies. All right, so let's do this with 2 or 3 colors. I'm going to do a red, and then I'm going to go to a blue and to a green. So I'm going to start with that buttery consistency. You could even do this with all your colors and do it as a rainbow. So here we go. Let's start with our dark pink. I know I say red, but it kind of is red here. Gonna give my brush a really good rinse. Dry it off a little bit. That's how I can always tell if I've gotten the color out. Okay, now let's grab that blue. Now, when you are mixing color like this, you don't want to lay down the next color right next to it like we did with the water, because they're going to mix too much and you're going to pull color and it's going to look weird. So let's go underneath it and then we'll pull up into it like this, okay? Now they're going to continue to melt together. And then let's grab our green and do the same thing. All right, we'll start underneath it and we'll pull up into that pink or that red. So think about this maybe as a sunset or a sunrise. So you might have yellows and blues in here. I don't think it'll be that dark. But remember, monochromatic, you can lay color right down beside each other, or color and then you rinse it and pull down. On this one, you want to lay the color here and then go underneath it and go up into it, because if you don't, what's going to happen is you're going to pull all that color down. Now, maybe that's something you want to do, and that's fine. But for this right here, we want to go underneath and pull up. All right, we have just a few more techniques left. And are these all the techniques for watercolor? Absolutely not. These are just the beginning ones. Let us lay down some color. Any color you want. Let's do some green. I haven't done much green here. You can put down any shape you want. Again, I'm just going to paint a nice kind of squarish rectangle, because this technique is not about painting something perfectly, right? This is where we're going to use our salt. This is a great activity to do with those people who love science, because this is all about science, right? It's about absorption rate, because salt absorbs. So we're going to take some of this salt and we're just going to sprinkle it down on here. And then you're going to get to see a little bit of this, but you kind of want to let it dry. So what's going to happen is that salt is going to grab that paint and it's going to absorb it. And it's going to leave this amazing texture here that is great for so many different things. Maybe you want it to be a sky or an ocean or just a textured leaf. It does not matter, but it's going to pull that out. It's going to leave white spots. It's really fun. It's very amazing. So we have to let that one go. The next one is pretty easy, and this is called dry brush. This is what happens if you don't have enough water on your brush, which happens sometimes, right? So I'm making sure my brush is nice and dry. And then I'm going to come over here and grab some paint. And I'm going pretty strong with this one. Okay, then I'm going to come over to my paint or to my paper towel and just dab some of that paint off. And then I'm going to paint. This, my friends, is called dry brush. So we have talked about value, we've talked about brush stroke. And so what you can see here now is the value has been completely reduced. Well, it's still got really strong values, but we just don't have this consistency with it, right? This is great if you want to do hair, if you want to do grass. This is really nice. See how that is? Maybe you want to do fur on a dog or a cat. It's just another technique. Okay? We have one more, my friends. And then we have to go back to glazing. So let's go back to glazing really quick. That's one of the ones we did in the beginning. Glazing is where we have to have it dry. So I'm going to give my brush a good rinse and I'm going to grab that paper. That is the one where we laid it down in a very light shade. Like here I did just a simple flower. Now, what makes glazing work is that it's light, and we're going to put them on top of each other. So we're moving from this wet on dry, dry on, or wet on dry, wet on wet. But we can still layer. A lot of people don't understand that with watercolors, you absolutely can layer. They just need to be dry in between. So I'm going to come back with that same pink, okay? But I'm going to make it a little bit more value. Not a lot more, just a little bit. I like to test it on a test strip, so let's just lay it down over here. So the value has increased. Do you see that? Now I am going to just pull a little bit of that water out. And I'm just going to lay down some petals on top of this one. And see how I'm layering these? And I can do this as many times as I want. You can even glaze with the same kind of hue, or the same kind of value. So maybe I want to go back to where it's a really light pink. I'm going to do that on the last petal so that you don't feel like you have to increase your value so much. Okay, now this type of glazing allows you to see the other petals underneath. And so that's pretty cool. Again, that's called glazing. All right, let's switch that out. Let's do our last technique. This is a fun technique. It's pretty easy. So there's a thing called spatter and there's a thing called splatter, all right? Sometimes they're interchangeable, sometimes they're not. Let's do this one. Now, this is a big deal right now. A lot of artists are doing this. It's super easy. It's a little messy. Let's grab some paint. You want to make sure that it's watery enough so that when you do this, it can move. So I'm going to take two brushes. This is how I like to do it. And I'm going to brush down across this. And you can see that I'm splattering it on my paper. Now this is good to do if you want some texture, if you want certain effects. Another thing that you can do is even just tap it. Okay? You don't have a lot of control over this. You don't want to go crazy with this when you do it, or you're going to entirely cover everything. And you want to be careful because you're going to make big drips. Just be careful. You don't need to splatter everything. All right? And so those are just some more techniques that you can practice in your journey in beginning watercolor. Thank you so much and have a great day.